So, for a generation, psychedelics like psilocybin, which are known as magic mushrooms, and LSD were cultural spectres, and they were synonymous with the chaotic energy of the 1960s counterculture and subsequent decades of prohibition. But today, we in fact are seeing or experiencing a remarkable resurgence, a renaissance, if you will, stepping out of the shadows and into the stark light of the laboratories. Now, it's no longer just the relics of a bygone era. You know, they're being seriously investigated as powerful tools to treat some of our most pervasive mental health crises, things like depression, anxiety, PTSD, and addiction. But this new chapter raises an ancient and profound question, which is when we peer through the psychedelic lens, are we seeing a healing truth about reality or a comforting, albeit potent, distortion of the reality? And to understand the present, we have to briefly glance at the past. Indigenous cultures across the Americas have used plant-based psychedelics for millennia in sacred rituals, viewing them as conduits to spiritual realms, tools for healing, and a means of connecting with the natural world. There's always ceremony. As an aside, us rich countries simply buy into whatever we fancy in the important parts of processes, and we do this for so many things. But there's no doubt in my mind that there were some form of rituals aside, beside Western substance consumption in the far past. It's a tribal thing, it's a human thing. However, the modern Western story really began in the mid 20th century when compounds like LSD were synthesized by Albert Hofmann and initially were heralded by psychiatrists for their therapeutic potential. This was, however, swiftly eclipsed by their adoption by the anti-establishment movement, which led to widespread moral panic, political crackdowns, and a decades-long freeze on scientific research. And the thaw, which we're experiencing now, kind of started in the 1900s or 1990s, I should say, and has now blossomed into a full-blown research revolution. Modern studies, like those from institutions such as Imperial College London, they're producing some startling results, and they're doing these under controlled therapeutic conditions with single guided doses of psychedelics, and that can catalyze profound psychological shifts. Now, their studies state that patients often report a dissolution of the ego, the loss of the rigid self-critical sense of I, and this leads to profound or feelings of profound connection, peace, and perspective. And it's this experience that researchers suggest allow people to break free from the destructive, cyclical thought patterns that characterize conditions like depression. Now, ego dissolution seems to be a rising and waning fad for Westerners. There's no doctrine. It's simply adults or young adults returning from trips to India that propagate their experience, writing books, blogs, podcasts, and talking about what I consider a misunderstood experiences. And I always remind people that the ego is a necessity. Even attempting to shed it seems like a pointless exercise. And it's also testament to the fact that those who give credence to the ego have little, or shedding it, they have little or no idea of its origin. Because the ego really is part of a psychoanalytic theory by Sigmund Freud, who proposed that the ego is a component of our personality that balances the conflicting demands of the id, the superego, and the realities of the external world. And he characterized the id as the most fundamental aspect of personality, driving individuals to satisfy their most basic instincts and desires. In contrast, the superego represents a moralistic aspect of our personality, which develops later in childhood as a result of upbringing and social influences. And the ego's role, and I keep telling people this time and time again, I'm not saying I'm the one to spread this or propagate only, but its role is to mediate between these two often opposing factors, ensuring that the fulfillment of the id's needs and the superego's moral standards align with the constraints of reality.